Don't make a scene. That's all there is to it. Understand? With that single cutting remark from my half-sister, Kelly, all the joy and anticipation I'd been holding on to, shattered in an instant. She had opened the door to my villa, just a crack, peering out through the narrow gap with eyes as cold and empty as if she were looking at a pebble on the side of the road. Have you ever felt like the invisible one in your own family? Tell me in the comments. I'm reading. The cold hit me first. A slap of lake air that tasted like metal. I stepped off the gravel, and the pier lights threw a white halo around the cottage I bought with overtime. Night shifts. And every raise I fought for. My name on the deed. My credit. My lists. My careful menus. Inside. Laughter rolled in warm waves. I knew those voices too well. My sisters. My stepmother. My father. And the fiancé, who never looked me in the eye unless there was a grill to assemble or a bill to hint at. I tried the handle. It stopped on the chain. The smart lock chirped like it recognized me. But the chain had the last word. Through the crack, I caught a slice of tree lights and a smear of gold ribbon. I also saw my own reflection in the glass, a red scarf. Wind-chapped cheeks. And the truth I kept dodging. They were early. They were already in. I backed up 2 steps. Snow whispering under my boots. And touched the little pine cone in my pocket. My mother's ornament. The last small thing she left me that no one could steal. The surface was smooth where my thumb had worn it down over the years. I kept it close for courage. Tonight it felt like a pulse. Brooke's voice drifted from inside. That sugar-coated command I knew by heart. You know, as if I should understand the rules without being told. As if being the person who pays means I also pay with my pride. I pictured the catering trays I ordered. The extra linens. The little candles that smelled like cedar and orange peel. Handled. Placed. And lit by people who would never thank me. The homeowners association gate had scanned my license plate at the entrance. I scheduled my own arrival for later. Careful. Organized. Predictable. Someone used the guest code early. They did not trip over it by accident. They planned over it. I breathed in. Slow and steady. And let a quiet part of me speak. This is what families call peace, when they do not want to look at what it costs. One person swallows the shouting until her throat forgets its shape. They tell her not to make a scene, because scenes would show the truth, and the truth would stain the carpet. They call her dramatic when she notices the bill. The slight. The cut. They insist it is normal to overlook the one who holds the house up. That is the trap. The cruelty keeps happening because it wears the mask of quiet. I learned to be the quiet. I learned to bring my own chair to tables that pretended not to see me. I learned to read the room and shrink in all the right places, so the picture would look neat. And tonight I felt every year of that training like a tight collar. It did not make me noble. It made me useful. Inside. Taylor's laugh rose and crinkled like wrapping paper. My father's voice answered. Low. Practiced. The words did not matter. The melody did. The melody said, "We have our real family here." I touched the pine cone again, and felt a thud of anger, so clean it glowed. It did not make me shake. It made me clear. I thought about the shopping lists on my phone. Wagyu, I had ordered from a butcher who remembered my name. The cake from the pastry chef who wrote a note that said, "You deserve a soft holiday." The fresh garlands in water tubs in the mudroom, already inside my house, because someone used a code I created. I pictured hands that were not mine arranging things I paid for. Then deciding where I fit in the picture. Outside. The lake wind drove needles into my sleeves. My breath came out in fast ribbons. I stepped closer and spoke through the door. Even though I knew no one would answer, I said, "I am the owner." I said, "Let me in." Silence replied, followed by a clatter and a burst of applause. A toast. To what? Exactly. I looked at the lock and felt the old urge to explain myself, collapse like a tent in a storm. I did not need to persuade anyone tonight. I did not need to perform a daughter who takes less space than her own keys. I reached for my phone. My thumb hovered over contacts I used when I wanted comfort. Not yet. Comfort later. First. Spine. The pine cone warmed in my palm. I remembered the year I was 12 and spent a week sewing names on stockings while my stepmother memorized the guest list. Mine was hung last and a little lower. Like a note in the margin. I told myself it was fine. It was not fine. It became a rule in my head: if I am useful, they will invite me closer. Usefulness is not love. It is a leash. Snow hissed on the lake. I watched the pier light wink and steady itself, and I matched it. I fixed my voice to something that did not shake. I said, "Again. Open the door." Someone turned the deadbolt on the other side. Not to open, but to emphasize their answer. I heard the click, and something in me clicked too. A small switch I had been reaching for without knowing it. I stepped back. Shoulders down. Heart even. I am not here to beg. I am not here to prove that I deserve the house I worked for. I am here to remember that silence is not peace, if it is paid with my dignity. I slid the pine cone back into my pocket. I lifted my phone. And for the first time in a very long time, I chose my voice over their picture. Snow was everywhere, sliding sideways. A white static against the windshield. I sat in my car with the engine running low. Heater fighting a losing battle. And the glow from the pier light cutting through the dark like a single, shaking candle. I could still hear the faint hum of music from the cottage. My cottage. I pressed the phone against my knee, steadying my hand before I called. My voice didn't tremble when the dispatcher answered. I'm the owner of a property on Cedar Bend. There are people inside who entered without permission. I spoke each word like I'd rehearsed it for years. Maybe I had. The dispatcher's tone was calm. Do you have proof of ownership? Yes, I said. Everything's on my phone. The digital deed, HOA registration, payment records, even the entry log. You'll see that guests entered before my scheduled access time. Understood. Please wait in your vehicle. Officers are on their way. The line went silent. I stayed still, listening to the heater tick and pop. The pier light blinked once, twice, and held. My reflection in the window looked almost serene. Not angry. Not afraid. Just finished. Blue lights appeared down the long driveway, weaving through snow like ghosts. I stepped out into the wind. Boots, sinking deep into powder. The officers greeted me. Checked my ID. Scanned the documents. One nodded. The other murmured into his radio. All verified. You're the owner. Ms. Carter. Let's get this sorted. I watched them walk to the door. Firm. Professional. Their presence felt like gravity returning to a world that had tilted too long. They knocked. Police. One said. Open the door. Inside. The music cut off. I could picture it, Tiffany's frozen smile. Brooke's wide eyes. My father's attempt at diplomacy, already forming on his tongue. The door creaked open an inch. The chain still tight. Ryan's face appeared. Color draining, as he saw the uniforms. This is an official eviction, the officer said. Voice, steady. No, drama. No heat. You have 5 minutes to gather your belongings and vacate the premises. Refusal to comply will result in immediate arrest. 5 minutes. That was all it took to flip everything. The house that had glowed with laughter a heartbeat ago fell silent. Tiffany appeared, half-dressed for company. Words, dripping, sweet like spoiled syrup. Officers. Please. There must be a misunderstanding. This is family. The senior officer cut her off. We've confirmed ownership. This isn't a domestic dispute. It's trespassing. Brooke's voice wavered. You'll regret this. Daisy. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Her words didn't even make it past the snow. Inside. Chair scraped. Drawers slammed. The scent of the roast I bought drifted out the door like something already grieving its purpose. They moved through the house quickly now. Stripped of performance. Faces hard and pale. My father tried to reason. His voice breaking around phrases like, it's Christmas, and can't we just talk? But even he knew the rules this time weren't his to bend. I stood on the porch as they filed out Tiffany with her perfect hair and no coat. Brooke clutching her phone like a weapon that had run out of battery. Ryan avoiding my eyes. Taylor crying, as if tears might undo the evidence. None of them spoke to me. They passed like ghosts through the snow, their footprints already filling in behind them. The officers watched until the last taillights vanished down the road. Then one turned to me. You're good now. Ma'am. Door's yours again. I thanked him quietly. The words felt strange in my mouth. Thank you for enforcing what was already mine. When they left, the only sound left was the wind against the eaves. I looked back at the pier light. It was still burning steady. No longer shaking. I realized my hands weren't shaking either. Inside, the living room was a mess of their half-packed chaos. Half-eaten food. Coats left behind. A glass cracked on the counter. The fire was still going, casting a soft orange across the floor. Everything they'd tried to steal space. Joy. Peace was still here. Waiting. For the first time in years. Silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like ownership. And somewhere deep in that silence, I knew this wasn't the end. It was the start of something colder, cleaner, and mine. The first thing I did after they were gone was stand completely still. No music. No voices. Just the hiss of the fire and the faint crackle of pine. I hung my coat on the rack and stared at the living room I had built with my own hands. Every candle. Every ribbon. Every garland was exactly how I planned it, and yet it felt like someone else's house. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the pine cone ornament, and hung it on the branch closest to the hearth. It caught the light immediately. Warm and alive. My mother's light. I whispered. It's just us again. For a long time, I simply breathed. The ache that had lived behind my ribs for years didn't scream anymore. It hummed, like metal cooling after fire. I realized this feeling wasn't numbness, it was power. All my life, people mistook my quiet for weakness. But silence can also be armor. When you survive long enough, pretending not to notice the cuts, you start to learn where to place them back. That's the invisible chain. Survivors wear the one no one sees. But you feel every time you breathe. Tonight, I felt it snap. I walked to the sofa, ready to clean. And that's when I saw it. Something black wedged between the cushions. Tiffany's phone. Unlocked. Still warm. For a second, I just stared at it. My reflection hovering over the screen like a ghost deciding whether to haunt. Then, I opened the messages. A group chat. Brooke. Taylor, remember to use Daisy's code before she gets here. She'll pay for everything. As usual. A flood of laughing emojis. Then Tiffany again. Real family first. She can have the leftovers. My stomach didn't drop. It didn't twist. It steadied. I scrolled further, and the mask fell completely. There. It was a thread. From a week ago. Tiffany bragging to her club friends about the charity venue she'd registered. My cottage. She had turned my property into a public brag. Collecting donations through her social circle under my name. Calling me her sweet stepdaughter, who insists on paying for everything. I took screenshots of every message. Every timestamp. Every photo they shared of my living room. Pretending it was hers. Metadata saved. Forwarded to my email. A digital record that would outlast anyone's lies. Then I went outside for a minute. Stood on the porch. And watched the snow drift across the frozen lake. The wind carried the faint sound of sirens from far off. Fading into the night. I realized I wasn't waiting for rescue anymore. I was planning. I opened my phone again this time to dial the people who had never needed proof of who I was. Pei answered first. Her voice sharp with worry. Daisu, are you okay? I'm fine. I said. But I need you. And I need Daniel. Justin. And Alyssa. Bring everything. Laptops. Scanner. Camera. I'll explain when you get here. She didn't hesitate. We're on our way. I ended the call and looked back at the pinecone ornament glowing above the fire. It looked small, but steady, just like the pure light outside unbothered by the storm. Shining anyway. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't broken. I was awake. And that, more than anything, terrified the people who thought I'd stay silent forever. By the time headlights climbed the long drive toward the cottage, I already had the evidence organized. The timeline written. The truth archived. This house wasn't a scene of betrayal anymore. It was a crime scene, waiting for justice. And I was done being anyone's charity. They arrived in under an hour. Headlights cutting through the snow, like truth through fog. When the door opened, warmth came with them, Paige still in scrubs. Daniel with his laptop bag. Justin carrying a camera. Alyssa, balancing coffee cups she'd grabbed from the gas station. New questions? No hesitation. Just presence. Paige hooked me first. You look calm. That scares me. I am calm, I said. That's the scary part. Daniel set his things down on the table. Already switching into lawyer mode. Show me everything. I handed him the phone. Tiffany's. She left it behind. There's a group chat. A week of messages about using my code. My money. And a new twist. She registered this house as a charity venue for her club. Alyssa whistled low. She really played the long game. Then we'll play the smart one, Daniel said. He moved methodically. The way surgeons handle instruments. First, he connected the phone to his drive and began exporting the chats, preserving every timestamp. Every image hash. Every scrap of metadata. Justin photographed the cottage. The receipts on the counter. The untouched trays of food. Alyssa stacked every printed invoice in neat piles. Catering. Decorations. Cleaning deposit. Even the rekeying service I'd called that afternoon. Paige typed each number into a spreadsheet until the total glared up from the screen, $8,260. I sat beside Daniel and watched him craft something sharper than anger documentation. This is your weapon, he said quietly. Fax. He drafted the letter calm. Precise. Unemotional. To Jeffrey and Tiffany Carter, we are submitting a formal claim for damages totaling $8,260. Supported by evidence attached herein. You have 7 days to respond. Failure to do so will result in legal escalation to the HOA and the ethics committee of the club where your charity venue was misrepresented. He glanced up. Do you want to add anything personal? Yes. I said. One line. He nodded. I took the keyboard and typed slowly. You may not use my property, my address, or my name, for any purpose, ever again. Daniel read it once. Smiled faintly. Simple. Lethal. Paige leaned back in her chair. This isn't revenge. Is it? I shook my head. No. Revenge is chaos. This is structure. That's the difference people never see. Justice isn't loud. It doesn't scream or throw plates. It writes letters. It keeps receipts. It makes copies. It walks into the storm with a binder instead of a bat. That's what I had become, the quiet that ends the noise. The sower of order in a field of mess. We signed everything. Daniel sealed the envelope. Alyssa pressed the certified label across the front. He said, they'll get it tomorrow. 7 days to decide who they are without your silence to cushion them. Outside, the snow had softened to dust. The lake glowed silver. Paige touched my arm. What are you going to do now? I looked toward the pier light, burning steady through the window. Sleep, I said. In my own house, without checking the door. And for the first time in years, that simple sentence felt like power. That night I lay in bed and listened to the wind against the glass. Not as an intruder, but as a witness. Every sound belonged to me again. Every creak in the wood felt like the house exhaling with me. Tomorrow, the letter would leave my hands. Tonight, peace stayed exactly where it was supposed to. 7 days passed, like water over ice, slow on the surface. Relentless underneath. On the 8th morning, my phone buzzed. A new voicemail. My father's voice. Smaller than I'd ever heard it. Daisy. Please. Just talk to me. The letter. Your stepmother's beside herself. This can't be how we end things. I didn't call back. Instead, I called Daniel. That afternoon we met them at his firm. A long glass table. Spotless. Reflecting all the faces that used to define mine. Jeffrey sat hunched. Eyes rimmed red. Tiffany wore her best winter white. Lipstick. Perfect, but hands trembling. The envelope with their names lay between us like a verdict already sealed. Daniel kept his tone even. You've reviewed the claim. You can settle the full amount today and sign the non-contact agreement. Or we proceed with filings to the HOA and your club's ethics board. Tiffany laughed. A short, cracked sound. You're blackmailing us. Daniel didn't blink. No. We're informing you of your options. One restores order. The other invites exposure. Entirely your choice. I watched her jaw work. Pride fighting panic. Jeffrey's hand trembled as he reached for the pen. We'll pay, he whispered. Just, let's end this. The checkbook opened. The signature slid across paper. A sound softer than snow. But it carried weight. They both signed the non-contact clause beneath it. When it was done, I stood. Tiffany looked up at me. Voice, trembling between fury and disbelief. How could you do this to your family? I met her eyes. Family doesn't steal from you and call it tradition. Jeffrey opened his mouth. But no words came. The man who once told me, don't make things worse, sat silent while the mess collapsed around him. For once, he let it. I turned to Daniel. Are we finished? He nodded. Completely. As I walked out, the winter air hit me clean. The courthouse clock rang somewhere down the street. Later that day, I met my father again, just him this time. A small cafe by the water. The same lake that once mirrored all my heartbreaks. He looked years older. No Tiffany. No facade. Just a man who'd finally run out of excuses. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I should have protected you. I was a coward. I sipped my coffee before I answered. I believe you're sorry. But forgiveness isn't free. If you want any relationship with me, it's just us. No mentions of them. No stories. No names. He nodded slowly, as if each motion cost him breath. Understood. I stood, leaving money for my cup. Old habit. I paused, then took it back. No. You get this one. Outside. The wind off the lake cut sharp and clean. I felt lighter walking away, not happy. Not sad. Just done. That night, back at the cottage, I started the final reset. New phone number. New locks. Guest list wiped clean in the HOA app. The place that used to feel like a burden of memories became an asset. Steady and neutral. I signed a winter lease for a corporate client the next morning, let the house earn instead of ache. Before leaving, I hung the pinecone ornament beside the door. My own little ritual. It caught the sunrise and threw it back gold. As I watched, one thought anchored itself deep. Families built on image fall apart the moment the wallet closes. They mistake access for affection, reputation for love. The second you stop paying, you see who was really invested? I smiled, because I had stopped paying, and the silence that followed was the most honest thing they ever gave me. Tomorrow, new guests would arrive. Tonight, the cottage was mine. Again, quiet, orderly, warm. And as the pier light burned steady across the frozen lake, I whispered to the dark, this is what peace looks like. If you've ever had to choose yourself over a picture-perfect family, I see you. Share your story below. And if hearing mine helped you breathe a little easier tonight, subscribe. Someone else might need to know that choosing yourself isn't cruelty. It's the beginning of truth.